Let's give a hand to our technical support, which is my husband, who is doing everything and everything. Andrew Taylor, whoop, whoop. You are my hero because you made it here tonight, despite of cold. I had a couple calls of consolation and called me and said, Abby, still have it because it's so cold. Like, seriously, we are in New England. We are tough. We know how to do it. So welcome to our 5th annual Human Trafficking Awareness event. Let's give a hand. So tonight is an evening of coming together around human trafficking awareness, a unity that transcends our political preference, our religion, our ethnicity, nationality, and background. This is an evening of listening with open heart and of honest self-reflection. It is also an evening of learning and deepening our awareness of human trafficking, a crime that statistically impacts more people today than when slavery was legal. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry, one in which the sanctity of human life is often treated as disposable. My name is Ina Taylor, and I'm a founder of Changing the World. Changing the world one heart at a time, this is our mission. We believe that changing the world starts within, and as a ripple effect, it affects our family, our community, our county, our state, our nation, and the world. This mission is inspired by Acts 1, verse 8 from the Bible. In my journey with human trafficking, awareness began in Ukraine. I'm from Ukraine, where we work to bring awareness to one of the most vulnerable population, which is orphans, aging out of institutions. These young people were often released into the world without safety net, and predators were waiting for them. Moving to Cape Cod, we began in 2012 Hello Summer J1 program for international students who come on J1 visa exchange program. Through this work, we again encountered a painful truth that immigrants, young people, students, orphans are the most vulnerable for trafficking. Over the past 5 years, we have witnessed meaningful progress. District Attorney Robert Galibos has championed this cause. Let's give a hand. Our police departments have come together in collaboration, which is wonderful. Let's give a hand. Jen Havener is not present today, but she launched a Treasured Life initiative addressing human trafficking. Thank you, Jen Havener. This event has become a launching pad for community proactivity. And for that, we are deeply grateful. And let me be clear, it's just the beginning. There is still much more to be done. Amen? And I want to extend my heartfelt thank you to District Attorney Office. Thank you very much for your support and for being here. For our panelist, Detective Katerina Parachi, thank you very much. For Katya DeCunha, thank you so much for being here. For Melanie Bartone, and who connected me with Jasmine. Thank you so much, Melanie. And I have a lot of thank yous, so I want to make sure I mention everybody. I want to thank Jen Havener for generous contribution. I want to say Cape Cod 5, thank you so much for your support. Melissa and Hector, our Air Force veterans, Nina, and I want to say Brewster Baptist Church, thank you very much for your support. Pastor Greenmore is here. Thank you for your generous support, which made this evening possible. We all play a role. Thank you, Ring Brothers, for generous this fruit baskets to our wonderful speakers. Thank you, Ring Brothers. And thank you, Great Awakening, Andrew Taylor, for hosting us. Craft Coffee Community Connection, thank you very much. Hi, this is World Changers coming in. And tonight, we are honored to be joined by incredible women whose lives reflect resilience, restoration, and hope. Alyssa, she's here on my back. Can you wave to everybody? This is Alyssa, everybody. She's our new speaker tonight. We are so eager to hear your story. Alyssa is a Bags of Hope recipient, a survivor of sex trafficking, and a woman of recovery. She has been living at Living Hope Farms for the past year. Jasmine Grace is a survivor of sex trafficking and addiction and now lives a life of purpose, healing, and hope. Yes. She's married to her husband, Keith, and together they raise 5 children and lead Beauty from Ashes Ministry, which has just became nonprofit. Let's give a hand to that. Congratulations. And our panelists I already introduced. And thank you so much for being here. You're here to learn and listen. And now let's warmly welcome our Jasmine, and she will give introduction about Alyssa. Jasmine, thank you for coming back year after year. Thank you so much. I want to give you a hug. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. Okay, I am so thrilled to be here. It has been, 4, 5 years, something like that, that I've been coming down here to speak and to share my story, and it keeps growing, and different people keep coming, and things keep happening. I love it. On the Cape, everyone doesn't think trafficking happens on the Cape, and I'm like, yes, trafficking happens everywhere, no matter where you are. And so, as a survivor of trafficking, I've been out of that life and out of addiction. I think it will be, I've lost track. It's 18, 19 years at this point. Amen. Thank you. And when I stand here to share my story and raise awareness, I've been all over the country. I've spoken from, basements all the way to the United Nations and places that I never would have imagined that doors would open. And the way I can do that is because I no longer carry the shame that once kept me silent. And that's the thing about trafficking and prostitution, addiction, exploitation. It creates an immense amount of shame because we weren't created to be exploited, right? That's not what we wanted to be. That's not what we dreamt of as little girls. Being a prostitute wasn't anything on our list. And so I always come and I share, and I'm not going to share my entire story tonight because I don't have, I don't feel like it's necessary, actually, because Alyssa is going to share her testimony, and I'm just going to give a little bit more of a context about trafficking and how it happens, and we're going to have a conversation. So when you think about trafficking, okay, you're here tonight. I don't know all of you, so I'm wondering, what are your thoughts and ideas when you think about trafficking, sex trafficking in particular? Have you been to conferences? Have you read about it on social media and in the news? Have you read survivor books, or have you only watched movies done by Hollywood? Right, so I have questions. So when you think about trafficking, what do you know? I'm just trying to gauge the audience to understand. So tell me, when you think about trafficking, what thoughts and ideas come to mind? And the panelists can't answer. That's unfair. Okay, so go ahead, just tell me, shout it out. Okay, when you think of illegal immigration, what about that and trafficking go together? Right, absolutely. Maybe don't even speak the language. Right, and so susceptible. So then you can actually think of labor trafficking as well, right? And how closely linked that is to immigration, absolutely. And sex trafficking happens a lot of times in labor trafficking as well. Yep. What other thoughts? Yes, it definitely is prevalent. That's real good. And what do you think the average age into the commercial sex trade is? Exactly, between 12 and 14 years old. Yes. But by the time they sometimes get identified, they're adults, right? And so adult women seem to be looked upon as prostitutes who have made a consensual decision, right? That's the way our culture frames it. But really, we know the entrance age into the commercial sex trade can be between 12 and 14. Yes, very good. And you're vulnerable. You can be vulnerable at any age, but obviously as a child. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. What else? Anyone in the back? Any thoughts, ideas? I thought she was going to say something. Can happen to anybody. Yes, absolutely. No discrimination on that. Absolutely. Great. Yes. Right. So a lot of times when people think of trafficking, they think kidnapping, right? And yes, that does happen. I have worked with women over the years that have been held in storage pod containers on people's front lawns, right? They're kidnapped, they're forced, they're held in the container, they're tortured day and night, they're drugged, and the neighbors, no one has any idea what's going on in this storage container on someone's driveway, and they're kidnapped. Yes. But for the majority, we a lot of times get involved because we're coerced, we're manipulated, we're groomed into it. And that's the hardest part to see. Because when you're in that, you can't see the coercion. And usually it's mostly through relationship, right? So people build relationship with you to get you to trust them. And then it gets flipped and the coercion is happening and you can't recognize it. And then before you know it, you're in the commercial sex trade and you can't get out. And familial trafficking. Have you heard or thought of even that aspect? That is not just on the rise, but it's major player in sex trafficking. I actually work with a woman who's in her 30s, who's been trafficked by her father since she was 10. And by day, she's a teacher's aide, so she works in a school system. She actually managed to get away from her father for a short time and had a son, a short relationship with the guy, had a son. The boy is 8 or 9. She's a school teacher's aide in his school. And every time there's a public event, the father makes sure he shows up and he sits in the audience, right? To remind her, I see you, I'm here, right? You want to have a normal life, but I'm going to invade that anyway. So it's quiet, right? She's not handcuffed to a radiator, right? She's not held in a storage pod somewhere, but she's in mental and emotional bondage. And when she was 10, he sent her away for a month or two to his partner's house, and they tortured her and made her do horrific things at 10. And then ever since then has been exploiting her. And the mom died when she was probably in her 20s or so. And they were split apart anyways. Lots of drugs, lots of crime, lots of abuse. And again, she managed to get away. She went to college for a little while, but she didn't finish because she mentally couldn't. And she came right back home to where she knows, and the exploitation started right over again. And I talk to her all the time, and she's so frustrated with herself because she can't get out. And she, he's done horrific things to her and made her engage in crime. He's carved whore across her stomach. He's shred her in all types of way on the inside. And one of her main components of why she can't leave is because there's other girls there. And they're young. And so she's afraid if she goes, the brunt is going to be put on those girls. So she just can't. She's so trapped. And a lot of people would grow weary with her and grow frustrated with her. But every time she texts, we just chat. And I don't want to ask her how you doing because I kind of know how she's going to be doing. But I just try to connect with her and I try to love her and be supportive, right? And that is the whole purpose. You never know where you're going to meet a victim. And all they need is one safe, supportive person to reach out to when they're ready to exit. And so during my time of exploitation, I also want to say the other factors that happen in exploitation, the why they happen, a lot of time is due to our childhood trauma. And if you're not familiar, a lot of social workers and counselors will be familiar with the ACE score, Adverse Childhood Experience. And at this point, day and age, you could Google it when you go home and take the test. It's 10 questions. And you can answer it yourself to kind of see what your ACE score is. So mine's a 4, meaning I didn't have extensive childhood trauma. So the more trauma you have, 8, 9, 10, that's the majority of the women that I serve, usually, the easier it is for a trafficker to groom you, right? If my ACE score is a 10 and I'm running away from abusive home, an abusive foster home, and I'm out on the streets and my ACE score is a 10, how much grooming is my trafficker going to have to do? Not much, right? Because the trauma has already done that. And then you think of our culture and our society and the entertainment and the music. When I was a kid, I'm in my 40s now, but so when I was a kid, I watched Pretty Woman, right? And so that's another idea and thought. Usually when we have these conversations, we think of trafficking and then we have another category in our mind and we think of prostitution. And for some of us, again, Pretty Woman might pop into your mind. Oh, right, that's consensual sex between two adults. And somehow prostitution has been coined like women's empowerment, right? You know how many young girls I've worked with who get duped into the commercial sex trade young and they go into strip clubs or now webcamming. How many young girls, even as young as 6th grade, have admitted to having OnlyFans, right? We can thank the internet for that and the explosion of Instagram, right? Everyone wants to be on Instagram and have the filters and the followers and all the attention, and you're posting half naked or provocative pictures there. And then OnlyFans comes and says, hey, take those same pictures and make them more provocative or naked. And now you have a growing fan base of subscribers that are going to pay you money. And so you don't even need a pimp today. You can have the internet. And so you don't even recognize it. And so when you think of pimps, right, and back in the day, we thought of the combat zone, right? You hear my accent. I'm obviously from the North Shore, right? So I grew up in Revere, Saugus. And yes, somehow as a kid, even I knew the combat zone existed. And you think of pimps with alligator shoes, right? A feather in the hat. That's what we thought of. And so when we don't see that happening in our community, we don't maybe know that it's happening, right? So it's hidden in plain sight. And then again, we have the internet that is becoming the exploiter. We have family members, close relationships that are exploiting in school systems, our next door neighbor, right? And that we're not recognizing. And so that's why I share part of that story to help give education and context. Because again, yes, it's happening in our communities. It's all day long. And we have to be aware. And the best way is to build relationship with people that maybe you wouldn't normally build relationship with. Somehow. You know, and I know once people have this burden on their heart to learn about trafficking and things start going and you start attending different events, things pop up in your life. Because now all of a sudden you're aware and you have a passion and you want to be part of the solution. And so things start happening. And so my ACE score, again, being a 4, meaning I didn't experience severe childhood trauma. I wasn't sexually abused as a kid. 80 to 90% of women who end up in the trade have been sexually abused, right? So that dial's been turned. And I didn't dream of being a prostitute. I went to community college. I graduated vocational high school. I wanted to be a hairdresser. I had dreams and goals and plans, but I was intersected around that age, 18, 19, by a guy that I met at a nightclub who knew some of my friends, right? So he wasn't a complete stranger. And we exchanged phone numbers and we met a couple days later and he pulled up in a champagne-colored Mercedes-Benz and I was impressed. Because I had never dated a guy like that had fancy cars and money and jewelry. And over this period of time, maybe 3 to 6 months, he groomed me into this position. And I had no idea. I didn't recognize it. I thought he loved me because that's what he was telling me. But at the same time, he's grooming me. He's planting seeds of doubt. Why would you want to go to school for journalism? Why would you want to work at a hair salon? You can own one. I know a way we can make tons of money and have a family and a business and a home and all the things. Right? And what 18, 19-year-old doesn't want to do that now instead of work real hard for it? And he's talking me into this. And then the kicker always is, well, you're having sex anyways, you might as well get paid for it. So then you think, yeah, you're right. I might as well. Same thing with the internet. Well, you're already posting those pictures over here for free. You might as well post them over here and get paid for it. And then all of a sudden, this feels somehow empowering. And then it's just a slippery slope right in to full-blown prostitution and exploitation. And again, because we weren't designed to do this, drugs become very, very easily linked as a way to cope with all the trauma. And a lot of, traffickers use drugs to control. A lot of girls get addicted because they're in the life and it's introduced to them. Or like me, I got addicted on the way out because I couldn't cope with all the trauma. And that killed the pain. Right? No one wants to become a drug addict prostitute, but can something just take away the pain, please? And that's what drugs ended up doing for me. And so these 5 years that I'd be under my trafficker, he used that slow coercion, manipulation, promised love, and all the things. And I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I happened to have a best friend who got into the life, and I didn't recognize it. I thought she just had a new boyfriend. And I went to a college party at Salem State University. And I'm in the dorm and they're all these boys are drinking and partying. And again, when I speak to crowds, especially when there's men in the room, I'm thrilled that men came. I don't know if your wife dragged you here or not, or if you came here willingly, but it's so important because men have an important part to play in ending sex trafficking. Because without the demand, there wouldn't be such a supply, right? And unfortunately, men are the demand for the majority. And that's when we have to roll it back even a little bit more and talk about pornography. Because porn is the fuel to prostitution. And today, young kids are exposed to porn younger and younger and younger. I'm familiar with a sex therapist whose youngest client is 6, and the little girl has been exposed to porn since she's been 2, and she thinks it's okay to have sex with anyone at any time because that's what she watches on the tablet. And this is by accident, right? No parent gives their kid a tablet and wishes or hopes that they watch porn. But because before we weren't aware of the harms of the internet and how dangerous it was, right? And so we handed kids devices without putting all the safety protections on it. And by the way, I have 5 kids and they find ways around the safety protections. Trust me. It is a full-time job to parent them in this digital age. Trust. So no matter what we do to protect, there's always ways around it. But that young age obviously was an accident. But the brain changes. The chemicals in the brain change. It's an addiction. It becomes a brokenness. And young boys today are addicted by the time they're 7 or 8 years old. Back in the day, to find porn or dirty magazines, you had to go dig in the back of your brother's closet, right? In the abyss, like in the dark. Or you went in a corner store and the dirty magazines, I remember like they had a black sheet over them or something. Now, like I took my son, he was 7, right? We're at the grocery store and Sports Illustrated. That's like soft porn, right? He's like, boobs. I'm like, ah, great. What am I doing? And a trigger and like all the things. And I think he's going to abuse women. I go to the 100th degree. I don't know what to do, but I mean, think about it, right? All these images that we're exposed to, young and younger. And porn definitely fuels that. So many people are trafficked through porn. And porn is so much more violent today and degrading. It's not like what it used to be, right? It's dangerous. And a lot of times that's the entryway. And so men, the primary consumers, porn sometimes, 1 too many, 1,000's never enough. And then they become purchasers, right? You can see how it could be the gateway. Kind of like we say weed is the gateway drug into addiction, while porn is the gateway drug into full-blown commercial sex trade. So you have to be aware of that. It's a really important conversation. And so I'm at this party and the boys are partying and drinking and they tell me that a stripper's going to come, right? And no condemnation, shame. You ever been to a strip club, bachelor parties? Again, this is our culture. Somehow this became like a thing that men do to celebrate. They go to strip clubs and order strippers and all this becomes so normalized. And I'm at this party and the girl walks in to entertain us and it's my best friend. And I was shocked because I didn't know she got in this lifestyle. And we cry, ruin the party, and they kick us out. So I go back home to my boyfriend, I tell him what happened, and don't you know he knows her trafficker. And this is by chance. And I share this part of the story because it's really important that he takes me to her house a few days later. She lives in Chestnut Hill, right? She didn't live in Lynn, right, in the ghetto somewhere. She lived in Chestnut Hill with a Range Rover and a BMW and a big fence around the home. And this is the thing, is that those neighbors, and I'll take you to the street today, I still remember it, have no idea that a pimp lives there and all these women, this is considered his stable, and they call each other their wife-in-laws. And he's trafficking women right out of this home in Chestnut Hill. And no one has any idea, right? Hidden in plain sight. And I go in, and she's got this big, beautiful home. She has her own room. He has his. And the other women share a room because there's so many of them. And she's using this language. That's my man. And I go to work. And I give him all my money, and he buys me anything that I want. And I go in her room, and she has clothes and shoes and Louis Vuitton bags, like the epitome of success, right, at 19. And jewelry. Again, she's not beaten. She's not drugged. If anything, she looked like she had arrived. And she's making it sound so glamorous. And so everything that I had learned prior about the commercial sex trade through TV, movies, music, and then seeing like this, it validated it, right? And then everything my boyfriend was telling me. So did I really make the choice based on the truth? No, I was sold the lie, but I couldn't recognize it. And what did I really want? What does every human being need? Right. And the biggest job of a trafficker is to make you believe you chose to be a prostitute, because then it becomes your fault and you stay longer. But again, if my A score is a 10, this is normalized. And getting paid for what was easily taken is now like an upgrade. And I don't know the difference because this behavior is totally normal. And so long story short, I get sent to a massage parlor down in Connecticut. You don't have to cross state lines to be trafficked, right? You can be trafficked out of your own home through the internet and to go anywhere. But I was sent to Connecticut to a brothel. That was back in the day before the internet was popular and American brothels, massage parlors were popular. Today, you're going to see Asian massage parlors, brothels, which is a whole other story about immigrants who are here that don't speak the language. They have incredible debt bondage to pay. All their documents are taken away, and they're in a lot of fear. And even when the feds do bust these places, they try to offer the women support. They're so scared, they say no. They don't offer the support, and they just bounce around to every other little place that pops up around, especially New England into New York. And they kind of just go around. So back in the day, it was these American-made massage parlors, brothels. And I'll tell you, at the core of this is identity disturbance. Your name gets changed. I didn't even recognize this then. The first moment I stepped in that massage parlor, I had a duffel bag full of condoms, baby wipes, high heel stilettos, skimpy dress. My friend taught me how to hustle, how to do the least amount of work to make the most amount of money. And my pimp told me I had a quota to make. I wasn't allowed to come out of each session without less than $100. And I had to be at this little place from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. for a few days in a row. And it was in the busy finance district of Hartford. People are there all day working. They have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. And it was dark and it was musty and there was no windows and everything you sat on was like a sticky, grimy feeling. And the men came in, they paid a door fee, and then they get to come in the lounge. We're all there, probably 16 to 60-year-old, all with traffickers in order to work there. And they come in this lounge and they get to hand you a ticket. And they choose you. And you go back into the room and you do what you have to do for the hour, the half an hour. And God's good gift kicks in. It's called disassociation. And that's how you survive. If you're not getting high already and you're completely sober like I was, your body shuts off in order to cope with this type of trauma. Because again, we weren't designed to do this. And I had to be somebody else for each and every buyer. That is exhausting. We were not designed to do that. And some buyers are sicker than others. And they want different kind of horrific things that I would not even be able to tell you about. And never mind when you're out of the safety of a brothel and you're going in and out of homes, in hotels and businesses, it's even more dangerous. It's even more violent because, you know, you're out of the safety, like no one's watching, essentially, right? You've heard of the Craigslist killer, those of us, right, who are older, because when the internet exploded and women were being exploited online and in these hotels, they get killed. But you didn't hear about that maybe when it was in the combat zone and those women were showing up in dumpsters because those are throwaway junkie prostitutes no one's caring about or looking for, right? It's the same thing. It's the same story. And it would take me years on end to understand what had really happened to me, that it was identity disturbance, that I had to be somebody else for each buyer, for my trafficker, and he kept me on a constant roller coaster. Totally isolated from my family, pulled me out of college, pulled me out of my my hairdressing job. Everything became completely isolated, and I'd be with him for 5 years. And every time I tried to run away and escape, he'd find me because I only had one place to go, which was my parents' house. Luckily, I had parents. How many victims don't have safe places to go, don't have parents? And he would come there and badger me and show up with gifts and diamonds and promise he wouldn't hit me anymore. And I stayed because, one, I'm a no-good, dirty prostitute. No one's going to love me because he made sure to tell me that on a daily basis. And then the commercial sex trade validated everything that he told me about myself because that's how I felt, dirty and no good. And I wanted everything he told me to come true. So I stayed and I waited. And the only good, healthy coping skill I had was to journal. Somehow I managed to write down what I was going through and on paper and hide it so he couldn't find it. And then I saw my primary care physician constantly, probably 3 times a month. And I was constantly self-diagnosing myself, and they just hand me prescriptions for whatever I wanted. And the doctor was always too busy to connect with me. He was just like, had his back turned, and he'd ask me questions and type away, and then hand me a script and send me on my way. But it was the nurse practitioner who was compassionate, and she sat down and took the time to connect with me. And she tagged me as a domestic violence victim. And she referred me to the clinic, and I got to go once. And that lady showed me the power and control wheel. And I started to recognize, oh, this isn't normal. And now, as I'm exited and I'm reflecting, sex trafficking, the kind that I'm describing, is like domestic violence on steroids because of the shame that you're feeling. It's like so intense because of the exploitation. And so I started getting stronger and thinking, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm really going to exit. And then my trafficker moves me up to another massage parlor in Kittery, Maine. And the way you had to be exploited there was you went to real massage therapy school. And I got a real certificate. And I took that sealed envelope with a lot of cash to the lawyer who paid off the police chief. And that's how it stayed open for 20, 30 years. So back then, especially, law enforcement wasn't always that helpful. But they've come a long way, and they are leading the challenge in many ways. But, you know, there's always a few bad apples in the bunch. You never know. But back then, a lot of times on the street, too, police officers would abuse their power, right? And not, tell women, if you do this, I won't arrest you, etc. It's come a long way where they're now offering services. They finally see women as victims and not the criminal. And they're actually going after the perpetrators, which are the buyers and the traffickers, right? Such a long story. It's so great. Think about how far we've come. And so within those few years being exploited in Maine, my trafficker was making so much money off me and all the other women that he had, he actually talked me into going to college. So I was trafficked while going to community college. I made the dean's list. I got all A's. I paid for everything with cash. Right? Would you ever recognize that I was a trafficking victim? No, unless you kind of tried to get to know me, but I probably wouldn't tell you what was going on. I actually was offered, there was a guy, he was from Bosnia, and he wanted to marry me on citizenship. And I was like, dude, no way. That's not enough money, and you're going to get us killed. You don't know what my boyfriend's not like a regular guy, okay? Just don't help me with math. Can I just please pass math? That was it. And I graduated after 2 years, and I have the degree. I should feel proud, right? I feel nothing because I can't feel anything. I'm so numb. I just can't feel a single thing. And around this time, Maine gets busted. They had a lot of money laundering issues. The feds got involved. And don't you know, there was a young girl. She was 13. She was being exploited. She was picked up by another pimp family, brought up there. And I didn't recognize how young she was. I knew she looked young, but I was in my own survival mode. And she had an aunt who was looking for her. And the aunt kept calling and calling, being her own detective. You know, most kids that run away in the system, no one's looking for them, right? It's too big, it's broken, it's overloaded. But this aunt kept calling. The place got busted. They recovered her. And I had a sense that I was going to get busted. So my trafficker allowed me to go, but that's because Craigslist became popular. So I was even trafficked through the legal system. A lot of times they say, especially in New England recently, to decriminalize prostitution. There's a big push across the country to just say, just decriminalize prostitution, make it totally legal. So you should be aware if you're interested in legislation to pay attention. And even through the legal system, people get trafficked. Because I was brought to Nevada where it's legal and you actually get tested, you get paid in a check. And I was still being exploited. I was still being trafficked. And then back up here to Massachusetts. And this is when, again, Craigslist and other adult websites, I happened to meet a guy who I went to his house constantly, and he paid me a lot of money and didn't want anything sexually. And so he became my safe person. And so, again, research says when a woman's ready to leave the trade, she needs one safe, supportive person to reach out to. And I'm not telling any guy in the room to try to rescue prostitutes out of the life this way. It's expensive. It's dangerous. Your wife probably won't appreciate it. I actually have a volunteer currently at Living Hope Farms that called me because her and her husband were going to do that. They were going to call women off the internet and meet them at hotels and pay them money and just tell them to get out and change their lives. You know who I'm talking about? Yeah, it's so amazing. And thank God she called me before she started doing that. I was like, no, hold on. There's a better way. Why don't you come volunteer here with these women and use your gifts in different ways? So anyways, it's not safe. There's plenty other ways for men to get involved in the fight. But this guy became my safe person. I called him up and I asked him to lie for me and make me fake pay stubs because I had to exit. And the reason why I was trying to make a statement and pretend I had a real job, it was because I needed an apartment, because every time I ran away to my parents' house, he'd come and I'd go back. And right around this time, it had been 5 years, and I had gotten pregnant right after I graduated college with my trafficker's child, but he forced me to terminate that pregnancy. And a lot of traffickers do that on purpose to keep more control, but he forced me, and I knew if you're not going to like allow me to have this baby after all these years, after everything you promised, I got to go. And so I saved money without him noticing. I put a few $100s in Ziploc bags and tie elastics and put it in the dirt in the potted plants. And I saved a few grand, and I wanted to get my own apartment. But again, how do I walk into a real estate agency and fill out an application? I can't. And that's the key. You have to recognize prostitution is not the world's oldest profession. It's the world's oldest oppression against women and children, because that's what it's designed to do, to keep you in bondage, and the door that much further away. And I needed pay stubs, and I needed to act like I had a job and I was regular. Think about the women with mental health issues, substance use issues, criminal records this thick with felony charges, children to take care of. They're in this never-ending cycle. But the Lord provided a way for me to go. He made me fake pay stubs. I got the apartment. Now do you think my pimp's going to help me move? Think he's going to like help me pack everything? No. I'm leaving it all behind. You know how difficult that is too, after all those years making all that money, and I'm walking away with 0. 2 trash bags. And I was bold enough to call the police, and I said, my boyfriend's going to get mad. Can you hang out on the porch? The cop stood here, my pimp stood there, and I left. And I got in one of the cars that was in my name, anyway, everything was, and I drove away to my big empty apartment. I have nothing. I'm suicidal. I'm hopeless. I'm traumatized. I call my mom because, again, I have one. She doesn't ask me questions. She buys me some furniture. She struggled so severely with mental illness, like she just couldn't access that. She saw the black eyes, the bruising, the problems. But when I needed her, she showed up. And a few weeks go by, and what do you think I do? Call him back, right? Because of Stockholm syndrome, right? Where victims feel intense emotional bonds to their abuser. That's how this life works. And also, I know if I'm prostituting on my own, I'm a renegade, and if he finds me, he'll kill me. Or my other option is to be purchased by another pimp, but I don't know how much more violent he's going to be than this guy. So let me stick to what I know, and I'll give you a cut of the money. I live here, you live there with all those other women, and we'll call it a day. Well, my grand plan doesn't work, and a few more weeks go by. He breaks into my apartment. There's glass, blood, all the things, typical fight. But by this point, I had the courage to call 911, and he was arrested for domestic violence charges. And I kept him away. So fantastic. I got away from him. I got addicted to drugs, not because I wanted to, but I just wanted the pain to go away. And that pushes me right back into the life of prostitution. And lo and behold, a few more years would happen where I'm homeless, I'm sleeping on park benches, I'm addicted to heroin, more trauma, etc. The story goes on. And I'm going to speed it up because I don't have a ton more time. But after all that to say, you can imagine, I finally get clean and sober in 2007, after many, many, many attempts. And it was because I was done. I was tired. My brother died of a drug overdose. We lived very parallel lives. So my mother lost her only other child. And I had to take a good look at myself. And then it was this little old church lady who took me to church one day and introduced me to Jesus in the backseat of her car. And that was pretty amazing. And it changed my life. And I haven't been the same since. And I've been walking with the Lord, like I said, 18, 19 years off the streets sober. And it wasn't until the first 5 years of recovery that I recognized that I was a survivor of trafficking. I didn't know that was a term. I had no idea that was a thing. And it was all because I got married. And I say this all the time. Survivors always joke and say, if you want your trauma to come out, get married, have children, watch and see what happens. And that is exactly what happened for me. I got married and my husband triggered me in ways that I could never have imagined. He couldn't help it. He was just a man. And everything he did went to the bad place in my brain. And we had children and we separated and actually divorced. And within that separation, I sought deeper healing through my faith, through counseling. And the key to healing from trauma, and this might be controversial for some, is through forgiveness. And I'm going to tell you, I did not set out to forgive. That's not fun. No one can't wait to do that. No, it's through this process of constantly seeking to get well and to heal. And it was that forgiveness piece. I was able to forgive my trafficker, the buyers, myself, my husband, all the things. And we were able to reconcile and get back together, have another kid, right? So there's 5 altogether, like we said. And I've been able to start this ministry because I wanted to help women that are still stuck in these cycles of addiction and homelessness and prostitution get well. And so I started giving out those bags. Some of you have even donated for those bags. Thank you so much, the Bags of Hope. It started out of the back of my minivan. We give over almost 2,000 bags a year now. And then I started running groups in halfway houses to help women exit those cycles. I always wanted a home to help the women actually come and live and recover. but that's a whole nother conversation. I was able to send the women to safe homes across the country because now the whole national landscape of anti-trafficking movement kept growing and growing and growing. We'd actually like pay for plane tickets or bus rides. We had volunteers hand deliver survivors to the location to make sure she got there safe. And so for many years, I've done that, raising my support as a missionary, no state or federal funding, doing this all in faith because I just felt called to do this. And then a few years ago, we were able to open up our own home, restorative home in New Hampshire called Living Hope Farms. And it's on 15 acres, 17 bedrooms. And the owners contacted me and said, we want to give this house to you for $1 a month. And we'll pay the tax and utilities. So it's pretty wild. It is very expensive, though, still to run that whole property and this whole ministry, right? You need staff, you need all the things to do this. And yes, we just became our own 501c3. I always had parked under another fiscal sponsor to raise all the funds. But we just came out from there. So now any donation that comes goes directly to us. We don't have to pay a percentage. And we actually have the residents that are from that house here tonight. Alyssa is one of them. And we have ministry servants, our staff that is here too. It's been amazing. And one of the parts of the home, not just coming to heal and recover and get well and build community and learn all the types of things that they need to learn, is it's pretty, I'm pretty, am I, is it hard? Is it strict? Is it tough? Is it?
You gotta be willing.
Yeah. Right. You have to be willing to want to get well, to do the hard work. I try to help women understand when they interview to come in, this has to be your last stop. And in order for it to be your last stop, you got to dig in and you got to get well and you got to be willing to do that. But part of that is building the social enterprise where the women are making products. So you'll see on the back, please visit our table. We're very proud of this. They're making tallow and handmade items. They're sewing. My book is back there. But every purchase that you make supports the ministry, helps us build this social enterprise, gives them workforce development skills. And I'm just like really excited to see where it continues to go and grow. So any part of that, you have a piece in it. So I want to say all that to say, introduce Alyssa. She's an amazing survivor that's been at the home for a little bit over a year now. She's going to share her story and her journey with us. But the really amazing part of it is about 9 years ago when I was doing the Bags of Hope and the groups in the halfway houses, it was one in particular in Lynn. I was running a group and her sister was in my group. And I knew there was something special about her sister. And we walked alongside and ministered to this girl for probably 5 or so years, and she wanted nothing to do with faith, which is fine. You don't have to want to love Jesus. That's fine. We still walked alongside her. We supported her. Long story short, she becomes a Christian. She gets married. She has a baby. And she tells us for all these years, though, about her sister that's still out there on the streets. And so for many years, we were always praying for Alyssa. And I had never met her. And Jen, every time Alyssa would call, especially after Jen met the Lord, she'd always tell Alyssa about God. Alyssa wanted really nothing much to do with that. But then Jen would say, you should call this lady, Jasmine, she'll help you. And Alyssa's like, okay, whatever. I'm not calling anyone. But finally, she did. And here she is, so she'll share her story. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. Today I'm a grateful, recovering follower of Jesus Christ. I would not be here without him, so I just have to give the glory to God right now. I am a little over a year sober. It took a long time to get that. I've never had this amount of sober time in my life. I was probably on the streets for over 10 years straight. In the city of Dorchester, it is rough. It is no joke. So I didn't grow up that way, though. I actually grew up in the suburbs of Massachusetts, a little town called Middleton. There's not even like city buses or taxis out there. It's like, I think there's Richardson's ice cream, cows everywhere. But yeah, so I grew up, I'm one of 3 girls, obviously, a younger sister. I'm the middle child. My parents provided everything for me. They loved me in that way. They did the best with what they knew. So we weren't a big lovey-dovey family. We didn't say I love you all the time. But, I knew that they loved me. But I didn't know how to show that love or receive that love. I didn't know what that love looked like. So I did really well in school growing up. A's and B's. I skipped a lot. I never had, my mom will tell you like, oh, Alyssa, she never had to pick up a book. But yeah, so I did well. I never really had a vision for myself. I kind of just coasted along. My first domestic violent relationship, my first relationship was abusive at the age of 14. And I was with this boy for 3 years, and he would tell me he loved me, and it became violent really quick. And I finally got the courage to say something to his mother one day, and she told me that it wasn't the first time that this had happened with another woman, and that just please don't tell the police. Don't tell the police. Just leave and stay silent. So that's the first thing that I got from that was just don't talk about it. And in my family, when something was wrong, on top of that, you just worked harder. It was something you weren't doing. You know what I mean? So you didn't talk about it. You just worked harder. So with that, then I ended up going into relationship after relationship, kind of dating the same guy in a different body. It was just abusive relationship after one after another. So finally, I turned 18. I graduated high school. I partied the whole summer away, and then I was like, "Oh, I have a car. I have insurance. I need a job." So, I actually got hired at a debt collection company, but I got hired in the legal department. So I actually did well for like 4.5 years at this job in civil law. I got promoted to assistant supervisor, but halfway through it, I picked up a drug habit. But I didn't say anything to anyone. I thought I had it under control. So that was when Perk 30s were really big. So I did that, and I met this guy there, and he was normal and had a job, a couple years older than me. I ended up getting pregnant for the first time. I was able to stop doing drugs by myself, kind of didn't go into a detox, didn't tell anybody. But that was the thing. I just stuffed it. So I thought I got this. I'll just work harder. So there were moments of weakness, obviously, in my pregnancy with my daughter. But by the grace of God, she was born healthy in September 2012. So she is 13 today. She's wonderful. But then I became a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, well, I have no sense of purpose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just at home by myself with this baby, no one to help me. And I'm like, what do I do? So I started, using here and there. And then I moved back to my father's house where my younger sister, who Jasmine just spoke of, was also using. So now that's easier access that I have. So we don't say anything. Like a year passes and it grows and grows and grows. And then all of a sudden I don't have them one day and I start to feel sick. And somebody's like, why don't you just do heroin? It's cheaper. So I start doing that. I don't say anything to anybody. And then finally my daughter, it's a little past her first birthday. And her father, after he left me, because he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, it's just, I'm stressed out. No, I'm hiding a drug habit from him. And then he's on his way home to bring my daughter back to me. And I'm holding on to a corner bag of heroin so I can care for my daughter because I'm going to be sick. And I finally was like, I can't do this anymore. So cat's out of the bag. I tell my mother and my sister, and I check into my first detox. I was like, I definitely need more than a week to get back on my feet. But that's all that I could get into. They didn't have like 30-day programs that you see on like Intervention where they fly you to some nice resort or something. Like, no, they were like, I have a week for you on Mass Health. So I said, okay. So then I went away, and then I'm off and running. Like a few years go by and I'm just in and out of my daughter's life. And I'm like, I'm going to get this before she remembers any of it. Well, then after a while, a few years pass, and I got some sober time together. I get a job at Dunkin' Donuts. I live in a sober house. I live next door in Lynn to this guy, and I meet him, and then he becomes abusive because he doesn't understand why I'm up and moody all the time, and I'm hiding a drug habit from them. And then when I finally tell him that that's what it is, he starts to be abusive to me because he's never dealt with that. He doesn't know how to handle somebody on drugs. So that was his way. So then I left him and go to New Hampshire. I find out I'm pregnant again. And I just ignore it. I just expected it to go away. And it wasn't going to go away. So then after a while, I'm living with this guy, and I tell him it's his child that I'm pregnant with. And I, in reality, have no idea if it's his or the sober house neighbor guy. And then I'm like, okay, so I just keep ignoring it. Don't go to any doctor's appointments. And then he's supporting my habit. So then our drug dealer is a female, and we owe her like $500 something. Long story short, I'm about 7 months pregnant, and I get arrested for my first felonies. I get 2 counts of armed robbery in Manchester, New Hampshire. I get arrested and put in Valley Street Jail. I go into premature labor 5 days after I get arrested and give birth to my second daughter behind bars. I was bailed out from the hospital by my drug dealer, the woman, and I posted bond. And because I was in jail for 5 days, no drugs showed up in my system, so they gave my daughter to me from the hospital. And so I brought her home. And then my drug dealer was like, hey, so you still owe me $500-600. Why don't I post an ad on Craigslist for you? You can make the money to pay me back. It's real simple. So my trafficker was a female drug dealer. So then once I finally did a couple days and made that money fast, I'm like, wow, this really was fast. So long story short, I didn't end up staying there very long. The guy I was with knew that it wasn't his kid because the dates didn't line up. So I called my sister and we started living out of hotels with my newborn daughter. And we start doing dates. I try to do as many as I can because it's my younger sister. I really didn't want to see her have to do that. I tried to take one for the team, as you would call it. That guilt sat with me for a long, long time. And I guess I apologized for her over and over, but I never remembered it because we were always too high. So that's a conversation that we had later on that we've obviously dealt with. Sorry. So then after a while, I go to court and my attorney tells me that if I want to avoid any jail time, that I would need to check into a detox. So I had to give my daughter to her father and check into a detox. I was so scared of jail that I actually stuck and stayed this time. And that was in 2015. So I haven't had a heroin habit for over 10 years now. But, well, I'm not done yet. So I stayed in a program in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was sober and clean for a while. And then I got sentenced to a county year in Valley Street Jail. I had a lot of sober time and the judge looked at that and it was like, because you don't have a record, I'm going to give you a break. So I did that. I ended up graduating the first trial of a substance abuse treatment for criminal offenders in Valley Street Jail. I was on the news. I was super proud of it. It was a whole thing. I got paroled back to Dorchester where I tried crack cocaine. And after I stayed 2 months on the bracelet and was released, I was off and running again. And it was a 10-year period before my family would even see me, talk to me, anything. So after I had my second daughter and I was like, I'm going to get this before she remembers it. That's the second time I said it. So I meet this guy in Dorchester. I would later be with him for 7 years. I called him my boyfriend because sometimes he would drive me to dates and tell me he loved me sometimes. He was abusive in every way, shape, or form, emotionally, physically, mentally, anyway. And I just, as time went on and as the drugs went on, and I'm just like, the further away, I'm like, I can't keep doing this to my family. I'm just dragging them through the mud at this point. I'm doing this to my kids. I can't be inconsistent. And like I just left them alone. And over the years, my family would look for me and try to get me into program after program. And then like there was one time I was sitting on a stoop in Dorchester and I see two white girls with hoods and sunglasses come by with the seats back. And I'm like, what are these two white girls? And it was my mom and my sister looking for me and they sectioned me. And I go into the courthouse and I'm flipping them off and I'm telling them like, I hate you and all this stuff. And the judge lets me go. Didn't believe anything that they had to say. They just let me right back to the streets. And that's when I was. But my mom and my sister, they really fought for me. And so over the years, my sister got married, found Jesus. I didn't show up to her wedding. She still saved a seat for me, though. Never held anything against me. But when I would call her, she would talk to me about Jesus. And sometimes I'm like, I gotta go. Or sometimes I would listen and like it would always bring me to tears. So I knew that like I could always call her and she wouldn't sit there and be like, you need to do this, you need that. She would just listen to me. And just always be there for me. So after a while, I left that guy that I was with for 7 years. I finally got the courage. He didn't care. So I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this guy. I'm on a mission now. Like I can be a strong, independent woman. I'm going to apply for college. I have a raging drug habit, but I'm going to apply for college now. So I get accepted to college and I'm living with a friend of mine who literally was like this 60-year-old Cape Verdean dude, wanted nothing from me. just to stay away from these bad men on the streets and stay safe. And I lived with him. And I met this other guy, and I'm like, oh, this has to be fate. Like, he's cute, he has a job, all these things. No, there was like red flags in the first week, and I ignored them all just because I wanted to be happy. And he became abusive like within the first week, and then started vandalizing this guy's house. So we had to get restraining orders, and it was a whole thing. But then this guy that I was living with dies. His heart stops, and I was a wreck, and sorry. And so who do I call when he dies? This guy. And I think because he tells me that, you know, he wants something different from me. He doesn't want me to do dates. He wants me all to himself. No, he was so mentally abusive and so possessive. I lived with him, and like he would go to work and I couldn't even leave the bedroom to use the bathroom. Like, even when he's not home. And if I did, I was so scared that somebody would see me if they walked by or something, that they would tell him that he would beat me when he got home. So then I find out that I'm pregnant 4 months along because he threw the microwave plate at me and split my knee open, and I had to get 7 staples in it. And the hospital wanted to do an x-ray, and they asked me if I was pregnant. And I was like, oh, there could be a possibility. And I was. And here's another pregnancy that I just ignore. Like, we acted like we were so excited for it, but we had no idea what we were going to do. And I just continued to use and just stuff it and all these things. And then we go out, and I'm at South Station, and my water breaks. And I had never been to a doctor's appointment, nothing. I'm just with him all the time, or waiting in this bedroom for him to get home. And so we go to Mass General. And I have to give a lot of credit to Mass General because they knew exactly what was going on. And my water broke, but I didn't go into labor, and they held me in the hospital. And a week later, I did go into labor because he was bringing me drugs in the hospital, and I was using continually while I was waiting. Like, I could have my kid at any moment. I couldn't even tell what I was having because they couldn't do an ultrasound because there was no water because my water had broke, but I didn't go into labor. So that's a whole nother story. But so a week later, I went into premature labor. My son was born 10 and a half weeks early at 2 pounds and 67 ounces. And by the grace of God, he is alive and healthy today. So Mass General agreed to keep me in the hospital until they found me a bed and a program for mothers and children. But as I'm sitting in the hospital and I'm by myself, and this guy shows up less and less and less, and I'm just feeling lonely, and I don't have a phone because he breaks them all, and I don't even know my family's numbers because I haven't talked to them at this point for I don't even know how long. And DCF took custody of my son before I even saw him in the NICU, and so they showed up. So I had no choice, but like it was all good for me to do what was right for our son. But he wanted to live his life. So all that pressure, all that, I ended up leaving the hospital, going to live with him. And then the abuse just increased. And it was every day, all day for no reason. And then finally, like I just got to the point where I was either premeditating suicide or thinking about ways to escape from him all day long. It was one or the other. And finally, I got the courage to just get up and leave. And I left with nothing in the middle of winter, nothing. He wouldn't even give me my son's baby blanket. I left with a couple documents from the hospital, no winter coat. And so I walked on foot, no phone, no idea where I was going to go, no numbers to call. Who would I call? Not my family, because I've been putting them through this for over a decade now. So I go and sit at this train station down the street from his house, and I just contemplate throwing myself in front of the next one that comes, the fastest train that pulls into the station. And they're going in and out all day. And none of them came. And this is the Lord working in my life, okay? Because I sat there for an hour and I'm like, I'm going to the next one, and not one showed up except the slow, steady train that comes for free, and I know exactly where it's going. And this time it was going back to Dorchester, and I took it. I knew exactly. I was like, okay, we're going to do the same song and dance all over again. Except this time I go to Dorchester. I run into a friend I hadn't seen in years. Like, he had just gotten out of jail, and he was like, hey, I'll put you up in a hotel and I'll give you this and that. And I was like, yeah, sounds good. So he gives me all these drugs and all this alcohol, doesn't want anything from me. And he's like, you can just stay here for the night. So he puts me in this room by myself with all these drugs and alcohol. And I'm just sitting there looking at them. And I'm like, am I really going to do this again? And is this all there is for me? Like, my son's in the hospital. I don't have custody of him. This is my third kid. They don't even like, and I'm not going to sit. Am I going to sit here and say, like, I'm going to get this before he remembers? Like, I'm going to say this again. And then I started to think about all the things that my sister told me. All the things she told me about God. And I'm like, okay, God, if this is all you have for me, then just take me out or get me out of here. And DCF had actually gotten a hold of my sister, because that's part of how they do things. When they take your kid, they reach out to family members and everything. And they had actually gotten a hold of my sister, and they had told me that she was thinking about fostering my son. So I was like, can I get her number? And they gave it to me. And so I reached out to her and I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to do something. And so she was like, call this woman who actually worked for Jasmine. And I was like, okay. So I did. And then I contemplated calling her over and over and over. And then I was like, God, if this is all you have for me, just let me know. And an hour later, I got a text on my phone. It was like, call these places. And it was a list of detox beds. I sat there for another hour thinking about if I was going to call. And then finally I did. And I got that bed, and then I get into detox, and I'm talking to my sister, and she's like, oh, you know that lady Jasmine I've been telling you to call for years? You need to call her now. So I got a bag of hope with the number on the card, and I did call her, and she was like, you know, I got her book while I was in detox. It was the first time I did not feel crazy. Like, gaslighting is a thing, y'all. It made me feel insane. And I read this book and I'm like, I'm not the only one who's been through this, like, at all. And so I stayed and I found out that she had a home. And it almost felt like too good to be true, because like I had gone to detox, to halfway house, to CSS. I did the whole thing over and over and over. So I checked into this detox and I had no idea if I was even ready to do this journey again. And then I found out that Jasmine had a home. So I kept calling every day and I'm like, are you sure I have a bed there? Are you sure I have a bed there? And then so I had to stay 30 days. I'm like, how am I going to stay 30 days? And then they sent me to a CSS after 2 weeks of that detox, and they called it the Compton of CSSs. I'm like, great. The water was brown. I called complaining every day about every little thing, but she stuck it out and answered the phone every single time. And then finally, I made it to Living Hope Farms. And I am standing here over a year later. I never was raised in the church, but I'm telling you, Jesus is real. He is real, and he is the reason I'm standing here. And my son is healthy, and he is over a year old. And I dropped him off to DCF for the last time today because he's coming to live with me on Friday, full time. And I was able to, after a year being in this home, like, I wanted my son instant. I wanted instant gratification, but like I needed this whole year to heal from all the things that living this life can do to you. And I am not in any way, shape, or form healed. I think it's a constant thing. I don't think I'm ever fixed, but like we're working towards it. But yeah, this has really changed my life. So I hope everything that I've experienced, that the Lord is going to lead me to help people, because I don't think it's wasted for anything. So thank you so much for listening. And I
Thank you so much. Can I give you a hug?
Yeah.
Wow. We have Mr. Steve Xaris stop by here, and he was here on the back listening. And let's give a hand to our state representative.
Thank you, Messina. Really quick. Wow. You know, this is our third or fourth year coming, but every time I hear the story, it makes me mad. You know, I was a cop for 40 years, so I've dealt with men. I've put rapists and domestic batterers and people that are evil in prison where they belong, I believe. I've done that work, but I've never heard stories like yours, except here. So I got quick questions, and then we're going to turn it over to the district attorney, you know, but I am the legislator in the room. So 40 years of enforcing the law, now I make the laws and set budgets, and it's really complicated and it's not easy, but I have it in my heart. But you made me think of a couple of things. One, Do you teach at the police academy? Can you do that in like 45 minutes or an hour? That's important because most police officers don't really know the modern day. Like in my day, it was the pimp and all that stuff, or a motel room. So there's something there I want to talk to you more about. You should be teaching, and as well as what you're already doing. And you mentioned decriminalizing prostitution. There is a lot of bills that say, don't make it a crime, don't make it a criminal act. What is your opinion on that, real quick? What's partial mean?
Meaning allowing the victims to have services and exit ramps, and then the perpetrators, the buyers, and the traffickers be the ones that are arrested because they're the ones perpetrating the crime.
Right, so that's good for me to know. And then you did mention Section 35. One of you told that story, right? Your parents and family bring you in, and the judge doesn't listen to them in a way and lets you walk out. I had to my neighbor. I live in West Barnstable. My neighbor struggled. Their daughter had addiction issues. And same thing. During COVID, they went to the court to get her sectioned. They weren't allowed in the building, so they had to do it by the phone. And the judge decided no. And that night, she took a pill that she thought was Percocet, but it was fentanyl, and died at 19. And they had to sell their home. They couldn't go back in the home. So there's so much I've been through, honestly, and I know. But listening to your story, I'm glad I came. But I see you as teaching. The cops need to know what's happening out there. And also the neighbors that don't realize that's going on. So that house in Lynn that you talked about, is that still happening? Okay, yes. Because you tell me and I will make something happen on that. But we can talk more in a way, but I just want to thank you, really. It's not easy to tell your story, but you need to. And we need to teach others and people that abuse others. Human trafficking, sometimes people what does that mean? It's modern day slavery, right? Don't forget that. And it's not victimless. So I'm just happy to be here, and I'm happy to be with the district attorney, because this is the person that enforces and puts people where they should be. Whether it's in prison or not, it goes through the system. And one of my jobs is to get him the money so he can do it right. All right, so thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Anna.
Let's give a hand to our Representative Steve Exaris. Thank you so much for stopping by and for listening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now it's our panel. Let's give a hand to a wonderful panel. And I would like to have our wonderful panelists to come sit down on our tall chairs. Miss Detective Parachi, let's give a hand. Katja DeCunha, Melanie Baton, and Mr. Robert Galibos. And we will start with Mr. Robert Galibos. We will start with you. I'll give you a microphone. And would you please just introduce yourself and what has been done this year? We are doing this again and again every year. And what's the status of human trafficking this year? We'll start with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Ina, for hosting us yet again tonight. So I realize we have 3 other panelists that have incredible experiences that you want to hear from, so I'm going to make this quick. But I came here for the very first time in January 2023, so this is my 4th time being here. And the first time I came in, I was in the back of the room. I was a newly elected DA, and quite honestly, and I confessed, that's a very bad word in my line of work, but I had confessed I didn't know anything about human trafficking, absolutely nothing whatsoever. And I listened to Jasmine, and she told her story, as we all now know, incredibly compelling. At that time, kind of similar to tonight, it's nice to see a couple other men in the room, but that particular night was all women, myself, and one other man. That other man happened to be the chief of police from Orleans PD, Scott McDonald. So he and I got together afterwards. I learned he was trying to put a task force together of law enforcement agents to investigate human trafficking here on the Cape. Inspired the heck out of me. I went back to my team, say, what can we possibly do? to promote awareness to the issue. We started meeting with a lot of stakeholders, including the Independence House, who I know who has a couple people here tonight. I see Cheryl, I see Chris in the back, and they have stuck with us since that initial meeting in February of 2023. And we started to promote awareness. This sounds kind of simple, but it's been really effective. We created a QR code. We put it on a magnet, and that we put that magnet all over the Cape. And then you hit that QR code, it goes to a particular website that talks about all these different resources that are available, should you want to make yourself available to those resources. And then we started launching a prosecution unit to prosecute these types of cases. And we began giving trainings. We gave 3 trainings in the first year that we got some funding, one in Barnstable, one in Nantucket, one in Martha's Vineyard. In total, probably about 150 attendees from hospitality world, transportation, and law enforcement. The following year, we held a 2-day statewide conference. Each day, over 200 attendees. We had 32 presenters come from all over the country, experts in the field, to give presentations, including Detective Parachi, because she is an expert in the field that you're going to learn about very shortly. And this is where I now want to stop. While we brought hundreds of charges, we've promoted awareness through this QR code across the Cape. Changing the world. Everything I just told you in a nutshell is because of this woman right here. She is doing it. Because she invited me to that event in January 2023, she is literally the reason why we have launched everything at the DA's office. Thank you.
Melanie, could you introduce yourself and your experience with human trafficking, and what is your role in bringing awareness about human trafficking?
Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Barton, former barista at Great Awakening Coffee House, and that is a complete honor. This place brought my dream to life here 5 years ago with this event. Jasmine is a longtime friend of mine, both personally and professionally. If you were here last year, I shared my story in depth and a bit about my advocacy journey from New Hampshire to Cape Cod. And, I'm really honored. This event, I was texting Ina earlier and talking to Jasmine on the phone earlier. I'm just in awe that this event has grown beyond me. I came to Ina and Andrew with this crazy idea that we should have a human trafficking awareness event in January here at the coffee house, when the coffee house opened a year and a month prior, just starting to get into the community. And you just heard the ripple effect that has had. And it's beyond one person. It's a community of people coming together. So a little bit about, my involvement. Again, I started here as a barista, but I also have worked in the field for over a decade in various roles from New Hampshire to Cape Cod. And some of the things I've seen just shifting, really, these task forces. Children's Cove is a local organization that I worked at for 6 years as an advocate, as a forensic interviewer, interviewing kids, supporting families through the process, and watching, the awareness of human trafficking that it happens here. And, I was seeing that from the inside out. We had adolescents come through the CAC. We were traveling to places like Dorchester, off Cape, for cases that started there but came on to Cape Cod. But the growth really from that to these task forces, growth in programming and creation of task forces at the local and national level that stem back to Cape Cod, the crucial levels of legislation and government involvement, as Steve talked about, asking survivors their opinion, giving them seats at the table, because that's first and foremost how change happens. And really carrying the torch and passing on the torch. We started this event 5 years ago because I was passionate about human trafficking. And look at this. This is unbelievable for a local coffee house to have started such a movement. A powerful testimony of the survivors and those who support survivors in these initiatives, GA Coffee being one of the first from the most least likely place. And so, it goes beyond the Awareness Month, and I want to share a little bit about that in some of the other questions, but I will pass it on to our next panelist, or Ina.
Thank you, Melanie. And Katya, thank you for being here. You represent Independence House. Thank you for all your volunteering and your work. And I met Katya when I moved to Cape Cod in 2010. We have common friend Catherine McGregor. Did it? Gregor, and she had organization called. Can you speak a little bit your journey, how you started to work with the domestic violence and human trafficking awareness, and also introduce yourself, please, too.
So I'm Katia Regina da Cunha. I am Brazilian. I have been to Cape Cod since we came from Brazil 22 years ago. I am so glad for the community we have for this place for Cape Cod that I can call home. Even though with everything that is going around, I can call home. So I'm really blessed by that. So I have been working at Independence House for the last 11 years as a DV, domestic violence and sexual assault counselor. Also, and advocating for immigrant community. So the two roles. 6 years ago, we started Latinx in Action. It was an organization that really serves immigrants and another roles that doesn't fit on. No, everyone comes and can, and I would tell they are survivors of DV or SA, even though it is, you can say that the majority, it is survivors, but the stigma and all of that. So Latinx does that. So at Independence House, I if you ask with the trafficking is labor trafficking and sex trafficking, and they really mix together. They mirror because clients would come with look like DV, but and you find out that it's not DV. Or a client would come and that is a worker that it has been working for living on the top floor and not being allowed to leave because she's working all day long and nights, but also doing other service. So you see all of that, but and she is also afraid to report and all of that. So I'm advocating those 11 years working with all of this dynamic.
Here's Detective Katerina, hands-on experience. Can you tell us about current landscape of human trafficking? And I know you cannot tell all of us, but maybe some stories that you able to share.
Hi, everyone. So the current landscape for me is it hasn't really changed, and it's not a simple question to answer because it is complicated. But as far as a lot of times with people not understanding that trafficking does happen on Cape Cod, we don't check people at the bridge. We're not stopping people as they pull their boats in and their multi-million-dollar yachts. It happens everywhere. It happens on your phone. It happens on your children's game console. So I will share this story because he is now serving 15 years in jail. So I can now because he's serving a federal sentence right now, and this is a case from Cape Cod, and he was a trafficker from Boston, but he was way more lucrative coming to Cape Cod and trafficking women down here. So one of the things he was able to do was have this persona. He was a rapper, and he was a drug dealer. So there's a huge intersection too with that criminality of drugs and trafficking. And he preyed upon vulnerable women. And I do want to stress too, women are not the only ones that are trafficked. Men are also trafficked too. But this particular trafficker, he went after women. And some of his victims were people that were struggling with substance use disorders. Some of them were professionals with well-paying jobs, were single parents and had no one to turn to. He exploited the vulnerabilities. And thinking about the landscaping of trafficking, think about the victims. If you have a vulnerability, anybody can be victimized. It's all about how a trafficker is able to exploit that. And on the Cape, we are uniquely positioned. We have a lot of seasonal workers, but we also have a lot of workers that here a long time and we don't know what's going on. But this particular trafficker, I had known who he was. I knew who he was for a long time, and I did want to start a criminal investigation against him a long time ago. But in the policing world, I knew about trafficking, but not everybody else did. Human trafficking didn't become a law in Massachusetts until 2012. It was an anti-human trafficking laws were enacted federally in 2000. So Massachusetts was very much behind the curve. I became a police officer in 2009. So when I was first police officer, it wasn't illegal. That's what the feds are for. They'll look into it, but how? With what resources? So it has been a struggle changing minds and educating people on what it looks like. But I knew who he was. And I don't forget anything. And so I was unable to create a criminal case back in 2014 when I first identified him and identified some of his victims. But 2021 comes along, and I was able to partner with HSI Human Trafficking. And I now work with them as a task force officer. And they had been looking at me for a while, like, all right, what's her deal? And finally kind of gave me the offer, but said, what can you bring to the table right now? You say there's human trafficking on the Cape. Who? Right now. And I said, oh, this guy right here. This guy. He had just got out of jail 2 months prior, and he was already back at it. And so we were able to create a case. He was trafficking women here. He also did exploit heavily some women over in Mass and Cass. He's been in custody since October of 2021. I say it's my case. It's not my case. There's a lot of people who worked on it, but I picked him out. We had Homeland Security with me, obviously Barnesville PD, Boston, and he was sentenced to 15 years in jail for trafficking multiple people. And yeah, I'm excited about that. Trust me. I've been wanting to tell that story for a long time because I didn't want to say it before he was actually sentenced. But that was on the Cape. So long that I remembered and put him somewhere that if I could do it, I would. Because it does happen. And it is here. His name is Jonathan Vaughn. He went by Ason. You can look him up.
Sorry. Oh, loud. Hi. How were you able to identify that he was trafficking? Like, how did he sort of negotiate the channels that he was negotiating? What did it look like to you? Just so that we have the kind of general idea of.
Second microphone. Yeah, thank you. Straight up.
All right. So one of the things I do as a police officer, I do look for what's going on in the community, and I would go to the sex ad sites. And I know that might sound foreign to a lot of people. They're everywhere. And as soon as one gets shut down, one opens up. So in my job, I would go and I would look at who is posting sex ads in my area. And I would study the pictures because I memorized the tattoos. Sometimes it was just hair, like people's hair were distinctive if they didn't show their face, phone numbers. Where were they posting? I would go to hotels and run vehicles that were there. And so I had identified a particular person that was always posting. She had very distinctive tattoos. And one day, 7:00 in the morning, I see her sauntering down the street. And I see him. And he's walking off the sidewalk to the back, which is just kind of like, okay, she's, ready to be picked up because yes, she posted online, but she also would walk And I said, "There's my girl right there." And I went up to her and I started talking to her. And I got her name. And then he came eventually. He was very, very kind. And I got his name. And I was able to research from there. So police being nosy, doing those things proactive. I'm nosy. Doing those proactive things, like, I think that's it. Oh yeah, let me just go talk to that person. You can be friendly. A lot of times I've had people that were victims that they told me everything simply because I asked. You'd be very surprised what people will say if you ask those questions and you ask in a nice, respectful way, but also ask the hard question, not, is he nice to you? Be a little bit more specific.
Mr. Robert Galibos. So we have a lot of progress and a lot of successful stories. Where do gaps still remain? What can we work on in human trafficking awareness and rescue? And there's so many aspects of it. But
I think we've done a pretty good job getting the word out there, but we do still need to promote awareness. To Representative Exaros' point, we could use additional funding, and he's been able to get us some funding, which we very much appreciate, but we could use more resources to conduct more investigations. I was definitely very encouraged. This was just yesterday up at the State House. Our Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, announced a 5-year plan in regards to human trafficking investigations across the Commonwealth, and I think there'll certainly be a positive trickle-down effect down here to the Cape, maybe some additional funding to help us conduct the investigations. So I am very hopeful. And before I give the mic back, I just do want to say we really are blessed to have Detective Parachi around. You just kind of heard a sense of what her career is like. And we are very fortunate because she avails herself of a lot of the other police departments across the across the Cape. And she answers other detectives' questions when they may have a hunch of human trafficking going on. She brings a wealth of knowledge and can give some guidance to their investigation. So we really are lucky that Detective Parachi is here. Thank you.
Amen. Could I just add real quick? In the past, we talked about a bill that we filed and it never passed, which would help with the education. And now we did pass it. So it is Massachusetts law where the motels and places where people stay have to have signs and education and teaching the staff at our hotels in Massachusetts to recognize this type of stuff. So a couple of years ago, we talked about it like still sitting there, but we actually made it the law. So that's a good thing. And we need to make more. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say something on that just really quick. Watching, thinking about this question in particular, the awareness beyond the awareness month, like continuing to show up beyond January. And there has been, great strides and, I see it at the airport, right? Like in the stalls, those are things you didn't see before. The thing that we've all said that it doesn't happen here is still in the vocabulary that needs to leave. And how can we be those mouthpieces in our communities and challenging people when they say that to us? And really looking at, that it doesn't only happen overseas or international or away from us, that you're calling it out and you're sticking it out beyond the awareness month. And I had a friend, who is a survivor of trafficking. My experience was in child sexual abuse and sexual assault, but I had, so I always am talking to friends who are, when I'm about to speak, especially on a panel with this topic, that is not my story. And so I was talking to a friend and I asked her, and she said, it's beyond the awareness month because I live with it beyond the awareness month. And so how can we, if we are passionate, we want to do something, don't do it just in January. If anything, do it all year long. Even outside of January. And so, I think there's been great strides, saying that, it's still in the vocabulary. It doesn't happen here or it happens overseas. But there is hope that more people are replacing that with it does happen here. And I want to be a part of, the fight. So.
Do we have questions in the audience? We have some students from all the way from Boston who came. Can we give them a hand? Guys, thank you. You guys have a question? Thank you for being here.
I had an overall question about why some like areas in the U.S. want to legalize prostitution in the first place, and also like what are the obstacles against like what Jasmine said, partial decriminalization.
It was a little over a year ago now. I was asked if I would endorse proposed legislation to decriminalize on behalf of the person being trafficked. And I quickly signed off on that. So I don't believe that's made its way completely through the House or the legislature yet, but I'm feeling very encouraged sometime in the very near future that will in fact happen here in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Katya, thank you for being here. And you represent a vibrant community, Brazilians on Cape Cod. Do you have any maybe statistics or trends that you see in terms of exploitation, labor exploitation, and that you notice through your work of expertise in domestic violence?
So, to bring you a number, I don't have it from Independence House on trafficking, because as I mentioned before, they mirror together, and most of our the client come and what's thinking they most of the time coming from GV and shocking. They may not know they have been exploited, and they find out. And even with the sexual assault, and it is when we find out. With our communities that I serve is not only Brazilian, but Latinos and all the immigrants, but most Latinos with Latinx and at Independence House immigrants. It's sad, but it's a reality because people look at women as object. Thank you. Look at as object, and they treat them. It is marriage. They get marriage. They all the promise, and it is so lovely. And suddenly things just churn. And is that what's happening? And it's happening every day. It's happening here. And I'm so glad that we are not working alone on silos, that we have the DA together, that we do have this whole community working together, because we cannot do alone. Independence House can't do this alone. And we have to do this together. It is a reality every day.
So what I gather from personal experience, creating a safe community where vulnerable voices are heard and seen, where we take care of each other, and what you said I loved, building relationship with people that you would normally not, is one of the keys, right, of human trafficking awareness and saving people. But I also have a question to Katerina, how we as a community can work with you and partner with you and help you to find those predators. And can you tell us just like, A, do this, B, do this, like how can we partner with you and help you and support you?
I don't have like a flow chart on what to do, but there's so many different things you can do. First of all, everybody that's here tonight is doing something. I just want you to all recognize that. You are listening, you are learning. That is important, because then you're going to go and you're going to talk to the next person and you're going to educate that person. Because what you've heard our survivors, presenters talk about, and everybody up here, is that it does hide in plain sight. I don't think in any trafficking case that I've investigated, I had one person that identified themselves as a trafficking victim. Not one. So if the people that are being exploited don't know, how are the rest of us going to know? This is how. Ask the questions. It's also okay to report that you're concerned for somebody. There's an open investigation right now. I'm not going to get into, though I really want to. Oh my gosh. It began here in Hyannis, and it has gone across 20 states. And it began with a hotel worker calling the police department because that person was concerned for somebody. Ripple effect, right? So educating one another, advocacy, but just, I love that we have some young folks in the audience too. And I'm old enough that I can say young folks. Is what's so great about your generation is that you guys are more cognizant of being respectful to one another, making sure that your friends have autonomy and spreading that so that they know at a much younger age what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I'm also very glad that there are men in the audience too, because men do play such an important role in helping end the demand.
If you wanted to help out, Cape and Islands, capeandislandsda.gov. There's a tip line for human trafficking. You call that tip line, or you can fill out a form and email it in. It's going to notify. We have a cell phone in Trooper Jessica Corey's possession all the time. So you can call with that tip line, and it goes right to the state trooper that's assigned to my office that works with Detective Parachi to conduct investigations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any closing remarks? Mr. Robert, would you like to give some closing statements?
Thank you very much for doing this.
So we have this QR code that Dr. Robert is talking about is not Dr. DA. I'm already giving you a doctor. So on the back we have materials, we have brochures, we have all the information you need. On the right, please make sure that you support and purchase something from Grace. And please, let's stay in touch, and we will see you next year. And thank you for being here in the cold, cold winter. A lot of people called me, are you canceling? I was like, no, we're not canceling. So good job for you that you're here. And make sure that you walk away with a new friend. Before we go, anyone would like to ask a question? I see that someone wants to make. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this, everyone. One of my questions is, what's the current state of the landscape in terms of unity across organizations, across state lines in New England? Like, I know that has been an issue in the anti-trafficking field, is being siloed. And I know someone touched on that point, but I wanted to ask that specifically.
Melanie, or maybe you guys?
And then if anybody else, I moved here to Cape Cod in 2015 for a job at Children's Cove. And we weren't even talking really about trafficking. It was happening. We were managing the cases as they were coming in. But there was not, and now, these years out, looking at just what Rob has done since he stepped in, but even, we had started a task force too at Children's Cove, bringing people in, training them, bringing My Life, My Choice out of Boston in, to do some trainings here on Cape Cod, but that was very small scale, and what has grown just in the past, 7 years since I had started at Children's Cove, just watching, not only one organization say we need to be a united front and we all need to be in the same rooms at the same trainings, getting everybody at the table, but being able to expand the task forces and make them better, and do have a larger reach to who is at the table, getting survivors' voices at the table on those task forces, and so it's been really cool to see, kind of from a bird's eye view, from when I was like sitting there at those tables, like just starting to talk about trafficking and what we could do as a united front. Multidisciplinary teams are key in that, bringing law enforcement, bringing, clinicians, bringing advocates, bringing legislators, bringing the DA's office, and all of their people, bringing everyone together to sit at the same table, and also having the survivors sitting at those same tables to voice what they are seeing because they are in it and they are getting out of it, and they have the boots on the ground knowledge more sometimes than the professionals sitting at the table.
So it takes a village, what I hear. And again, I would like to reiterate that creating a safe community where we take care of each other and we notice and we make sure that vulnerable voices are heard, right? Let's do that. Let's do our part. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you. And I would like to invite you on March 13. We will have very important event. It's called Mental Health Awareness. And we will talk about suicide prevention. Just past these 2 months, I lost my dear friends due to that. And we would like to start a conversation and change the conversation. So I would like to use this opportunity to invite you on March 13. On Friday, we will have the best speakers, experts in the field. And we would like to see Mr. DA and everybody and Mr. Steve. And it takes a village. It takes all of us to make a difference and change the world one heart at a time. Thank you for being here. Please socialize, get a coffee, meet all of us. Talk to, if you have a question, Mr. Steve Exaris is here. Thank you again. Let's give a hand to our wonderful speakers. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Make sure to walk away with their products that they have. Thank you.